What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. The presidential candidates have drawn their ballot numbers in a crucial final step ahead of January's elections. Here's Joyce Tseng with the latest from the Central Election Commission.
Taiwan's edging closer to picking who they want to see succeed President Tsai Ing-wen as she wraps up her maximum 2 terms in office. A lot of local media have shown up this morning at the Central Election Commission as the 3 presidential hopefuls pick their all-important candidate numbers for January's elections. That's essentially the order that their names will appear on the ballot. Different numbers mean different things here in Taiwan, with some considered to be luckier than others. And so how are these numbers picked? Well, by a customary lucky draw. Third-party runners Ko Wen-je and Cynthia Wu from the Taiwan People's Party have landed in slot 1, while the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's Lai Ching-te and Bi Kim-hsiao have drawn number 2. That makes main opposition Kuomintang's Hou You-yi and Zhao Sao-kang number 3. All 3 camps have said they are satisfied with their numbers, and now voters will see these numbers play out in their campaigns, whether that's victory number 2 or everything's okay number 3.
很高兴今天抽到美德双全稳定向前代表着胜利的2号。
那1号一定是你最想要抽到的是，那今天有没有带一些什么就是比较幸运的东西？会相信这些吗？
哎，我跟你讲哦，我是西医人，没有很注重这种东西的，就是一个号码嘛，就给投票总要一个号码让他选的。
And though the international sphere will be looking to see how the 3 candidates manage self-rule Taiwan's relationship with neighboring China, the Taiwanese people will be eager to see how the 3 will help on bread and butter issues that will affect daily life here, like housing and labor policies. Now, the next date to mark is December 30th, when the 3 hopefuls will get to put forth and defend their vision for Taiwan at the televised presidential debate. Joseph Wu and Joyce Tseng in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Meanwhile, Taiwan's frayed ties with China are in the spotlight as the presidential race nears its final month. Taiwan's 2 main parties have always been sharply divided on this issue. John Van Trieste reports.
Flanked by lion dancers, presidential candidate Hou You-yi takes to the stage. The lion dance is an old Chinese tradition that, like many things Chinese, has made its way to Taiwan through waves of immigration and exile. And it's these links with China that dominated the campaign trail over the weekend. China claims Taiwan and has threatened to invade it. The question of how to deal with this threat is the long-running source of friction in Taiwan's politics. Hou's Kuomintang was founded in China, and though forced to relocate to Taiwan, still has an affinity for Chinese culture and history. Hou wants to patch things up with Beijing after several years of high tension. He wants to start with talks on non-political issues. And he wants to stop what he sees as a move by the ruling Democratic Progressive Party to take Chinese content, including its history and classical literature, out of Taiwan's school curriculum. It's a divisive issue here, one that was most recently raised by a teacher at a leading high school during an angry press conference.
你要看到老师跟家长的欢乐。 也不要用你们的政党高层所有的力量来攻击一个老师。
The DPP has a sharply different view of China. It's wary of Beijing's ambitions and promotes a Taiwanese identity. Its candidate, Lai Ching-te, says keeping Taiwan out of China's orbit is the only way forward. And he says giving his party another 4 years in the presidential office is the way to make sure that happens.
香港的民主 已经破坏去了，自由嘛已经无存在，因此经济嘛受到真大影响。咱一定要坚守咱的民主。在蔡英文总统领导之下，咱已经有信心开拓出一条对台湾有利的路线。
But it hasn't all been about China. The Taiwan People's Party's Ko Wen-je wants to become the first president in Taiwan's history not aligned with either major party. He has kept up his attacks on both, accusing the Kuomintang's leadership of living extravagantly and the DPP's Lai Ching-te of having illegally built property.
也不要党政高层吃香喝辣的然后那些基层员工不照顾了，错了就改掉就好了嘛。就不晓得赖清德在，我倒觉得很多事情发生了好做错了，就把它改掉就好了。
When Taiwan's voters go to the polls next month, they'll be presented with 3 different visions of Taiwan's future. One promises a new focus on old Chinese roots. while a second hopes to move away from them. And a third promises an alternative to this two-party tug-of-war that's long dominated Taiwan's politics. With such divergent ideas, the final month of campaigning promises to be a lively one. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
A Chinese rocket carrying a satellite has flown over southwestern Taiwan in space. Taiwan's defense ministry says it closely monitored the launch, but the rocket did not threaten the nation's security. It is China's fifth satellite launch this month, but is the first to fly directly over Taiwan. Defense experts say these satellites are used for military monitoring. More of Taiwan's fruit is heading to China. Beijing has lifted some of its restrictions on Atemoya just as harvesting begins. Getting baskets of Atemoya ready for export. These farmers in the southeastern county of Taitung got some good news. Their fruit is now allowed in China once again. Beijing banned imports of it in 2021 over what it said were concerns about agricultural pests, but it has gradually been easing those restrictions. After a first wave of imports in June, it's now letting in more Atemoya, or sugar apples, from over 1,200 Taitung orchards. Taidung's county chief has made 2 trips to China to convince authorities there to lift the ban, and she says the move comes at a key time for farmers.
如果不宣布，我们会很紧张，因为其实12月初已经开始在收果了。对，不过真的感谢，能够在这个时候，通过这第2波的名单。
Taitung farmers are doing their part to make sure that their products stay whitelisted. They're taking it on themselves to check their fruit for pests.
果农端就会开始先做1层的清洁，把膜拆开之后，看有没有微生物去在附着在果实上面。有的话，我们第一阶段果农就会开始做处理。
The county government has pitched in too, making sure there's no cross-contamination from different farms.
分仓分流，就是可能在某一部分是清洁区，某一部分是那个包装区，全部都要分开。那最后在这个全部都清洁完毕了之后，才可以做包装。
While more Atemoya have been cleared for import to China, it's not all good news. Some farms are still on the blacklist, and there remain concerns that Beijing is using these fruit bans for political purposes. Previous reports say officials there made accepting that Taiwan is part of China a precondition for resuming Atemoya imports. Taiwan's agriculture ministry is calling on their Chinese counterparts to resume talks to clear up these bans as quickly as possible. Hong Kong's first local elections under new rules, essentially barring pro-democracy candidates, have seen record low voter turnout. Just 28% of registered voters cast their ballots in Sunday's district council elections. That compares to a record high of 71% in the last race, held in 2019 amid huge pro-democracy protests. But Beijing imposed new rules on who can run this year. They also slashed the number of directly elected seats by about 80%. Israeli tanks have pushed into Khan Younis in southern Gaza in their search for a Hamas leader. Over 600,000 people are sheltering in the city. Regional leaders warn that the conflict could spread and radicalize a new generation. This comes as violence between Iran-backed Hezbollah and Israel escalates at their border with Lebanon. The conflict began on October 7th when Hamas raided Israel, killing 1,200 people. Gaza's health ministry says around 18,000 people have been killed in the fighting since then. Back in Taiwan, migrant workers and advocates took to the streets of Taipei to call for better government protections and services. Our reporter Tiffany Wong was there.
Protesting in the heart of Taipei, these migrant workers are calling out Taiwan's government for neglecting their needs for years. Alongside activists, they marched from the Migrant Workers Employment Center to the Labor Ministry to demand these government offices provide better public services for workers, including government-to-government hiring and bilingual information. One caretaker from the Philippines who has worked in Taiwan for 10 years says she wants the government to recognize their essential labor and take care of them in return.
We're so disappointed, of course, and we feel that we are not belong to this country. While we are working for them, and you really need to do with this to the workers. Why?
Migrant workers have been officially allowed in Taiwan since the 1990s, but they say that over the years, government agencies have failed to take responsibility for their safety, often leaving them helpless against abuse from a broker system, in which private employment agents facilitate their journeys to Taiwan, charging fees every step of the way, trapping them into a system of debt as they work to provide for their families back home.
So many institutional convention mention about the government should take responsibility to guarantee the workers cross-border have to have safety channel, including not to be exploited financially or physically or psychologically by the broker or employer. But Taiwan government so far didn't do anything.
There are over 700,000 migrant workers in Taiwan, but organizers say only a few hundred are able to participate in today's rally in Taipei, as they fear repercussions from their employers and even the government. Just another issue migrant workers continue to face as they provide essential services in Taiwan for Taiwan society and industries.
The government has said they plan to introduce an online assistance platform to help employers and migrant workers. And it's promised to investigate agents reported to be breaking the law. But these migrant workers say it isn't enough, and officials here have to do more to make them feel at home. Luffy Li and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Separately, labor rights groups are calling for better protections for firefighters, who they say face extremely dangerous conditions.
台湾10年来已经殉职了43位的消防员。那对于消防员来讲，我们的劳动条件都一直掌握在政府的手中，我们基层并没有我们自己的发言权。
The groups are halfway through a 3-week march across Taiwan for workers' rights. They protested at a site in the central county of Zhanghua, where a firefighter died on the job 2 years ago. In addition to better safety measures for firefighters, they're also calling for the right to form a union to better protect their own interests. The government says it is looking into this issue and will invest around $82 million in improving firefighting equipment. In sports, Japan has won this year's Asian Baseball Championship after beating Taiwan in the tournament's title game. Taiwan, playing as Chinese Taipei, took second place after losing in a shutout 1-0 at the Taipei Dome. Starting Taiwanese pitcher Shi Ruoxi delivered a standout performance, scattering 4 hits and 8 strikeouts over 5 innings. But it wasn't enough to best Japan, who took home its 20th title since the tournament launched in 1954. One of Taipei's most famous parks has a big squirrel issue. Literally, parkgoers have been feeding the animals, leading to lots of husky squirrels. Leslie Liao has more.
If the mere sound of a rustling food package attracts a swarm of squirrels to you, then you might be in Taipei's Da'an Forest Park. These furry critters have gotten used to people feeding them, and it's beginning to show. The park's squirrel population has surged, and the animals themselves are getting chunkier.
会拿面包屑，然后就会有一群松鼠围过来。但是吃面包的话，也许糖类会比较多，所以现在松鼠都看起来，这边的松鼠看起来都蛮胖的。
一般公园的话有，会让松鼠异常的繁殖，太多了。
Park authorities have urged people not to feed the local wildlife, but to little effect. Now they've installed cameras and are punishing the behavior with fines.
电影部分我们是11月28号装的，目前我们每天都有截取出来看，目前是都没有人在木平台这边做喂食。喂食野生动物是罚1200到6000块的一个罚款。
Though people feeding animals in the park think they might be doing good, they're actually doing harm.
公园里面有6600棵树，还有各种不同的植物，应该是足够它不要去觉得自己好像很有爱心。其实你做的一个行为是影响到它的活动，而且影响它的觅食能力。
According to estimates, Da'an Forest Park is home to 600 squirrels. The ideal population is 200. Such overpopulation could wreak havoc on the park's delicate ecosystem. So keep an eye on your lunch next time you visit. Howard Zhang and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
And thanks for joining us today for What's Up Taiwan. You can find more of our reports on TaiwanPlus.com. And finally, get in the holiday spirit with these images of the streets of London lit up for Christmas. I'm Eric Gao, and we'll see you later.